Welcome to Behind the Build, powered by Walden Homes, and I am your host, Jonathan Jacobs. Today I have with me someone who I met actually while we were both on a speaking panel in front of a number of different interior designers and I think a couple architects, talking about some of the best business practices and things that you can try to do to enhance your business. Excited to have you on today, and that person today is Cori Halpern of Cori Halpern Interiors.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
One of the things Cori and I touched on was the importance of knowing how things kind of come together, not just in design, but in the physical execution. It makes me think of Berman Stairs. They're a family-run company we've worked with on multiple builds, and what I admire most is the way they manage everything internally. From their own detailed shop drawings to in-house installation, no handoffs, no disconnects. And their range is pretty impressive. Floating assemblies, continuous curved guardrails, structural steel frames, integrated knee walls, hardwood finishes, glass systems. It's never one size fits all. Every staircase they build reflects a sensitivity to the architecture around it. But what really stands out is their responsiveness. They're on site when it matters and they're thinking ahead. If there's a conflict in the build, they're not calling later to explain it. They're already working through on a refined approach that keeps the integrity of the design intact. In a lot of ways, stairs are more than circulation, they're sculpture. And Berman gets that. Their work isn't just precise, it carries a kind of presence in the home that elevates everything around it. If you want to learn more about Berman, feel free to email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, @waldenhomes.ca, and I'm happy to connect you. Cori, thanks for making the trek across town. Cori's business operates out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As many of the people that have been on here, a lot of us are from the city or the surrounding area. While we have somewhat of a broader reach now into other markets, I just thought it's always important to be able to speak to those that are helping lay the foundation of what design looks like in our GTA and beyond. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, I will tell you this. You'll be able to see Cori's work on the Behind the Build podcast Instagram portfolio, where Cori will highlight some of her work. You can see it online, and it's all very beautiful. I'm going to say it with you in front of me.
Aw, thank you.
So without further ado, let's get into the history of you and design. As a child, what was it like for you?
As a child, in a way I could have drawn this trajectory, and in a way I couldn't, because until I found out what interior design was, I had never heard of an interior design. I didn't know anything about it, but I am the child of a very creative father and a very business-minded mother. And I clearly over-indexed on the creative, wouldn't have minded a bit of both of the DNA. But I come from a fashion background. My family's in the clothing business, and my mother always took great pride in our home, and it was always beautiful, and there was always wallpaper, and there was a lot of color. And my father is an impeccable dresser and also loves color and was never afraid, to put together beautiful things. And he and my sister have always designed beautiful custom clothing for people. And as a child, my sort of first foray into interior spaces was my parents were renovating my childhood home, and they had this idea to bump out the kitchen and make it a little bit bigger.
Okay.
And what they were doing, even as a kid, I was probably, I'm going to say 11 or 12. It didn't make sense to me what they were doing. And I said, why don't you do this and, make it look like this and put this here and put that there? And they both sort of looked at me and they said, that's a great idea. That's what we're going to do. And that's what they decided to do. And then sort of all through high school, I always gravitated towards creative courses, whether it was photography or art or whatever it was. I was lucky that I went to, 2 high schools that offered options kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I knew I did well in school, so I could have been, my father wanted me to pursue something very academic, like doctor, lawyer, accountant, whatever. And that just was not what was attractive to me. And I didn't know, I was thinking more architecture. I love to build, I love to make things.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time I ever walked into my high school guidance office was when in those days, you had to like fill out a form to decide what universities you were going to apply to.
Yep.
And I walked into the guidance office and I was like, I don't know where I want to go. I don't know what I want to do. And also in those days, fewer people went away to school because I'm from Toronto. My parents are from Toronto. My grandparents are from Toronto. So it was it was just assumed that I would be at home for school. And it was like, I had no idea where to even start. So I picked up the Ryerson catalog because my mother had gone to Ryerson.
Interesting.
And literally, it was like it was meant to happen. I literally just opened it to the middle of the catalog, and there was a course called interior design. And I had thought about architecture. And then once I read more about architecture, in those days, it was a 5-year degree program and you needed all the maths and all the sciences. And I was like, I don't think that's going to be great for me.
Can I use my photography portfolio?
I don't know if that's going to be that great for me. And my father, it was very important to him that I do something where I had a university degree.
Of course.
He didn't really care what it was as long as it had a university degree. So Two things. I had to live at home and I had to get a university degree. So I'm like, okay. So the catalog folds open and it's this course at Ryerson called Interior Design. It's a 4-year degree program. I can live at home and I'm reading it and I'm like, this is not bad. I didn't need all the maths and sciences. I needed some.
Yeah.
And then there was an in-person interview and a portfolio review. And I'm like, I can do this. This is awesome. And that was it. That was it. And I was one of maybe a handful. We had, in those days, you also had small classes. I think our class was 45 people or 48 people.
As the kids that were accepted as new students in the program.
Yes.
Okay.
So there was 45 of us and that was your class for all 4 years. You stayed with these people. The only thing you didn't do with them was your elective, and you chose one elective each term.
Per semester.
And that was it. And even then, like, I was working a part-time job and I got smart in the end and I did my elective like at night school or in summer school so that I could get it out of the way and just focus on, because the course is like, I had 40 hours of class a week, which my friends who were all at university had 20 hours of class a week. And, it was a really challenging thing, but we learned so many things outside of just interior design. We learned how to make furniture. They want you to home. And I am by far not an artist by any stretch of the imagination.
And when you say that you learned how to make furniture, does that mean that you were designing the physical furniture or were you physically making the furniture as well?
Both. We had a full-on workshop in our building.
Did?
Yeah, there's a whole building that's dedicated to the School of Interior Design.
Okay.
And on the first floor was a full-on workshop. So we went from designing furniture and sometimes one project would be, you were given a classic designer chair. I was given Rietveld red blue chair, like the Mondrian red blue chair. And I had to design a coffee table that was inspired by this chair. And you had to physically make it. And it was a good coffee table. My friend had it in their apartment for years afterwards. So there was that. And then there was also like crazy projects where we had to design a chair that was made out of recycled objects. So like toilet paper rolls or film canisters or cigarette packs or milk cartons or something like that. And you had to be able to sit in that piece of furniture. Like it had to hold your weight. So it was about finding out about structure and then, it was also a bit of fun and whimsy and that kind of stuff. And so we really learned a lot about art history and building code and building construction and art. Like it was a multi-pronged
Yeah.
approach to design.
And just thinking about other people that I've spoken to on here, and I can't think of anyone that's really gone into the depths of a conversation about what it's like to physically create these design products. So you worked in a shop with woodworking on the lathe, spindle, and doing all these kinds of things. What about like metals? Were you working with metals too, or you did?
So my personal project did not involve metal, but some people, they did involve metal. If you got, for example, Breuer's chair as your inspirational chair, then you were using bent metal. We learned how to make dowel joints, biscuit joints, dovetail joints. And I think it was to give us a sense of, because when you're designing an interior space, you're not just designing the space.
Yeah.
And it's a direct correlation to what I do now is I design a lot of the furniture that goes into the spaces that I create for my clients. And I really have a huge respect for our craftsmen and artisans who make our furniture.
Yeah.
And I have such an appreciation for it, and to understand what gives a product strength and structure, and how something is made and how something shouldn't be made, and how something is sustainably made and how something is made to last over time.
Yeah.
And that was really fantastic. So it was a 4-year degree program. And within those 4 years, there were so many different aspects of design and now going to school isn't the same as real life and the experiences you learn in real life. Yeah. So there were a lot of things that school just doesn't prepare you for. But what I'm really grateful for is not only did we learn how to draft, and we learned how to draft by hand. So it's like, I like to joke, it's like the Jurassic era, it's like I can draw. Like that's how I think out a project is I draw it out to scale, and then, it's all by hand, and that's how I think better. So we learned drawing, and we learned perspective skills, and we learned, sketching skills, and how to communicate through your drawings, whether it's to a client or to a trade or to a contractor. We did building construction where we had to literally build to scale models. And we had to build a store that lit up and, had the little displays in it. We had to do a cross section of a house, and everything that's involved in the cross section of a house. So, while I always defer to my contractors and my builders because they know this way more than I do, I like that I have a basic working knowledge so that we can have a conversation about how something is built. And I'm always fascinated about how something is built, because for me, I'm creating the concept of what we see in the end. Yep. And I work with my building partners together to figure out, okay, how can we achieve this? How is it built? And sometimes I get, well, we can't do it like this. We have to do it like this. And I appreciate that because, you're working with sometimes in my case, I'm working with a lot of existing architecture, and it's like, okay, well, what do we have to be mindful of? And I work with a lot of older homes. And so it's like, you have to respect the architecture, or if you're in a condo, you have to respect the parameters. So the education that I got gave me information and the skills to ask all the questions that I need to ask, I think. And furniture is just a part of it. And I loved designing furniture. I loved making furniture. I loved everything about it. And it was really great to learn how to work a jigsaw, work a drill press, like all of these things we learned how to do. Not that I do that in my day-to-day life or anything.
No, I know, but the reason that I really wanted to highlight this is because of the transferable skills that it does bring to what you provide as a professional, with the understanding of what the people that are bringing to vision what you're now designing, what they have to go through. So there's in some ways like a high level of respect and appreciation for the craftspeople that are bringing forward the vision that you have to extract from the client. And so there's that, that whole wheel that makes all of it happen. When you have that to draw upon, I just feel like it's an enhanced value add.
I've always felt that it has been. I mean, I didn't go to, I like to say, regular university to get a university education. I went straight to design school, and that was my university education. And then I was working I was working in the summers, and then I worked my last 2 years. I worked part-time during the year for different design firms. So I was working while I was in school.
Right.
And so even though I graduated at the height of a big recession when there were no jobs and buildings in Toronto were like left, right? There was no construction going on, no building going on. And it was scary. I was lucky because I had a job. I mean, it wasn't a great job, but it was still, I still had employment.
Cori and I talked a lot about the detail of how things are built and having the right partners in place. One of those partners I count on, and we count on at Walden Homes, especially when we're working on complex architecture, is the Doors For You. They've been around since 2006, and what's unique about them is how closely they work with architects and builders, right from the shop drawing phase. They're not just ticking boxes, they're engaged in the design, understanding the intent, and offering guidance on how to achieve it. Whether it's PVC, aluminum, wood, or steel, they've got access to a wide range of materials and handle everything in-house, from measurements, installation, and even service. No outsourcing, no handoff. That's huge. They've helped us pull off some tight builds with very little room for error, and honestly, I don't think I've had a single install with them where something wasn't anticipated and already taken care of. They just know what they're doing, and they care about doing it right. If you would like to be connected and speak to Martin about the product, about the company, feel free to reach out to me, Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca. I'm happy to connect you. So let's talk about that. So you finished school, and what did it look like for you? And when I say this, like, you're coming out of school, and I guess I've actually never really asked anyone this question, but like, did you feel like you were competing now with your classmates to find a job? And
Definitely.
was that a conversation that people were having?
Yes.
Or were they staying away from those conversations because you were competing?
We were a pretty tight-knit group because we were only 45 people.
Right, for a couple of
4 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, so it was because we were all terrified because we knew that it was a recession and we knew it was tough. I was lucky that I had been working while I was in school.
Right.
And I was working with my best friend. So that was great. And we were doing commercial design. We were doing executive offices. We were doing office design. We were doing government office design. Yeah. And we were working for a very small design firm, which has its pluses and minuses.
Yep.
But we had this job, and we were essentially doing this job through our entire fourth year of university. So, but we had really, really talented classmates who were working at like closet organizer places, like, because they couldn't get a job. Now, I also went to school with some incredibly talented designers that were in my class that are out in the world still doing incredible work today. And, their trajectory was awesome. So they didn't, and because they were talented, they were talented.
Right.
But it was a scary time. And we did talk about it. Some people left the city at that time. They may not have been originally from Toronto. So right. They left or went to a different center, or some people went to work, let's say, at a bank or at another company, sort of as an in-house. Designer.
Yep.
So, we were creative. There was one thing
You're in a creative field, finding creative solutions for your profession.
So people found creative solutions, and then most people are, not where they were at that time. So it was really just and something I tell my kids, like, your next job doesn't have to be your forever job. It just has to be that moment in time until your next opportunity comes. And that was true for all of us, I think.
Yeah. So I apologize for this random.
That's okay. I love a random.
You've been watching Landman.
I love Landman.
And Billy Bob Thornton
love that show.
Has this quote to his daughter that is in some ways in line with what you're referring to about what you told your kids. And that is that, like, your first love is not your last love. It's just top of mind as you're saying that, because you have to have What you don't have is experience as a
Right.
youth entering the professional field.
Right.
And there's a very good chance where you're starting is not where you're going to
No.
end up. And the career that you have at the time, depending on what it may be, might not be the last career you have.
Right. Exactly.
Um,
I mean, I had a lot of great, I think from even crappy work scenarios,
Yeah.
something good always comes out of it. You learn something, you meet somebody, you develop a skill, whatever it is, something good happens even in a bad situation.
But that also, you say that, but you also have what little I know of you at this stage of our relationship is that you also have a mentality that draws upon the good.
That's kind of you. Thank
Right.
you.
So,
But I think you have to live your life that way.
but
Otherwise,
there are a lot of people in this world that don't.
I guess.
So,
But life is long. And you know
Yes.
what? Like I like to say that, I did work for a lot of not great people. And I don't regret any of those experiences. I think if I had gone to work for myself right out of school, I
Mhm.
would have missed so much. Not all good, like some awful stuff too, but that made me very cognizant about the kind of boss I would be, or the kind of leader I would be, or the kind of designer I would be,
right.
how I would treat other people. And I think all of those experiences are super valuable. And so even though I worked when I was in school, one of my summer jobs my first job was in retail design. And again, I learned a lot from that. But I'm not doing retail design.
Look at you. Held
It was so long ago. Like it was another lifetime ago. It really, really was.
Same lifetime.
Same lifetime. It feels like well, put it this way, just to put it in perspective. When I was working there, it was the first time I saw a fax machine. So that's how long ago it was. It was a long time ago.
You just said life is long. So
Life is long. And if you're lucky, you get to work at something you love.
Yes.
Okay. And that is, I feel very lucky. And I tell people that this is the only grown-up job I've ever had, is being an interior designer. So for me, I feel very, very fortunate that this career, even though it's had many different twists and turns and it's looked different at different points in my life, it has always been my career, and it's been very good to me. And I've been very fortunate that I've had great clients. I've had not great clients, and that teaches you as much. Like, I just think it does teach you as much as the great clients, maybe more even.
Yeah. You have to have a willingness to want to learn and to see
100%.
things as an opportunity in your life to be able to kind of further who you are, both personally and professionally. So, okay. So tell me, so you worked at the job that was okay. And then what did it look like as you filled your cup with that knowledge? Were you always feeling the ambition to want to have your own practice? Or was that something that kind of started to lead its way into your life as you were working at another place that didn't really resonate with you?
So the light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
So I worked at the commercial design firm.
Yeah.
And then I had my first child. I had my daughter. And I thought, okay, well, and I took my mat leave, and I was like super happy to leave that job. Super happy. Sad I had to leave my friend behind, but I was super happy to leave that job. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to have to figure out a way to get sort of like still connected.
Yeah.
But I was like, at the time, I didn't want to have a nanny. I didn't want to do daycare. Like, I was trying to figure out how to make all the things work. I was very young when I had my daughter, and we were just trying to figure out, my husband was super busy with his career. So we were just trying to navigate like what this looked like for us.
Yeah.
So a colleague, another designer who I had worked with in my very, very first job when I did retail design, he had his own firm, and he asked me if I wanted to work part-time. So, and we were doing model suites and model homes for developers and sales centers. And that's really where I learned a lot about custom design, because everything we did was custom.
Right.
And it was fantastic.
Right.
It was fantastic. The job itself was just okay, but it was fantastic. And when I say just okay, it's because I wasn't good at working part-time. It was hard to work part-time because you don't always feel like you're doing well at either thing, right? So, but I learned a ton. But the light bulb moment was I was pregnant with my second child, and it was winter. And I had installed 3 model homes in Oshawa. And I was driving home at midnight on the 401 in a blizzard by myself. And my boss was at home asleep in his bed. And I'm thinking, this is nuts. If I'm going to work this hard, I'm going to work for myself. Like, I'm done. I had worked for several other places and people, and like while I was in school and up to that point. And I was like, you know what? I think now that my son was on his way, I'm like, I need something where I'm in charge, where I call the shots, where I decide. And I'm not getting a call, on a weekend or on a day that's supposed to be my day off, asking me to work or to come in or to this or to that, which I guess I understand. I don't do that to the people that I work with or that work with me. I have a healthy boundary. We have healthy boundaries, because I just think that people's only priority in life is not their work. And I get that. And it doesn't mean we don't work hard. And it doesn't mean I don't work hard. It doesn't mean I'm not still up at midnight figuring something out. I am, because the buck stops with me because I'm the owner, but that's my decision.
Yeah.
I'm not being told to do that.
Yeah.
So that was my sort of thing, is when my son was born. And that is when I decided I was going to hang up my own shingle.
So what year did you officially open your practice?
That was 1996. And I still have suppliers that remember me bringing him in his carrier to their showrooms. And now he's all grown up, and it's very funny because, they remember when he was a baby, and I started very small. And it was like evenings and weekends, it was like when I could cobble together a babysitter or childcare. And then the years go by pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so then I remember when they were both like in camp for like the morning, and I had the whole morning to myself.
And but you make it an unrealistic list of things that you're going to get done.
Well, and the hours between 9 and 11 go by. It's like, oh my God. But it was still like 2.5 hours, and I had to go pick him up from camp in the morning. Like, my daughter was staying all day, and he was like, 9 to like 11:30. And I was like, oh my God, I have 2.5 hours every single day. But that time did go by very quickly. But it's just like, as they grew and I had more time, like, my business grew proportionately, I guess, is the only way to say it. And that's because being a mom was the best job I ever had, bar none. Like, it was the best job I ever had. And then once my kids went, it was like the only job you don't want to get fired from, right? And then just my business grew as they didn't need me as much anymore. And that's how I did it.
So let's talk about that. So let's talk about what it looked like in that early stage.
Sure.
Carrying your son in a carrier.
Yeah.
Carrying your son in a carrier.
Yeah. Like in the car seat, right?
I know. I'm just thinking about the duality of of those words I'm using. Anyhow, so I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sometimes, this is like my own little like dad humor. Okay.
That's
sitting
funny.
in this chair. It's pathetic, but whatever. It is what it is. You're starting off the practice. You're having to take your child around.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it look like? How are you getting your first projects? How are you finding these sales opportunities? How are you meeting trades and suppliers? How are you meeting good builders? Like,
great question.
There's so much to unpack.
Great question. So that at that moment is when I sort of made the decision that I was going to switch to residential.
Okay.
And almost exclusively residential.
Yep.
Because most of the time my clients were the mom, like the head of that household. So, you can say to another mom, I can't meet you at 4:00. I have to pick up my kid from school.
Yeah.
And you get no blowback whatsoever. Like, it's totally fine. They get it. Like, it's hard to be on the phone with the CEO of the bank that you're designing their office, their private office, and you have a kid pulling on your leg, saying, mommy. And, that's not professional. So you have to sort of work with what you've got. And I was totally okay with that because I had learned a lot about residential design when I had done model suites and model homes for developers. And I was just transferring those skills. I still did custom design. So I met a lot of great contacts over the years, whether it was mill workers, whether it was contractors, whether it was builders, whether it was workrooms, all these people. And then I also made sure that I kept up my continuing education. So as an Arito member, I made sure that I went to seminars and went to new product launches and went to this and like whenever I could. So I was still, skin in the game kind of thing. Like I was still not irrelevant. I needed to know what was still out there. I still tried to sort of, go to showrooms and get out there as much as possible. But my projects were smaller and they started sort of with referrals in my neighborhood. And it would be something as simple as, can you come and pick my paint colors? Like really. And I was billing by the hour in those days. And so, yeah, I would go pick your paint colors for a couple hours or can you, design or, my basement, I need a basement reno or I need a bathroom reno. Like it was very small projects that were very manageable for me. And it just, my design life was small and it just grew proportionately. It grew from, okay, I can, renovate your powder room to ultimately it was, now I'm doing, entire homes, entire condos. And it's more of the renovation work grew. In the beginning, it was definitely more, the decorating and the design work and the aesthetic work and the things that were more bite-sized that could be accomplished in smaller chunks and took less of my time and less of my supervision because I always wanted to make sure that whatever it was, it didn't matter the size, that it was done properly. It was done with attention to detail. It was done with care. It was done with keeping the client's wish list in mind, making sure that you deliver, that you don't overpromise. And those are things that I still do to this day. It doesn't matter what the project is or how much money the client has. You still are giving 110% every single time. And it's really important that every client feels seen. That's why I work with every single client and I'm on every single project and I do all of the design work. And there are other people on my team that do other things, but the FaceTime with clients and the meeting with them and the working with them and the troubleshooting and problem solving and all those things, that's what I do. And that's what I do with them because every client's project is just as important as the next.
Yep.
And again, that's something that I've always maintained, that it doesn't matter the scope of work. It's just make sure that it's done properly. Yeah. So yeah. And then the business just grew. Like it was all referrals. I've only had referral business and repeat clients all these years.
So no paid SEO, no paid AdWords,
never.
no Instagram pay, none of that.
No, never.
So we are starting a newsletter. It's called Inside the Challenge. We want you to be a part of it, either as a consumer of the information or to record the information. The concept is simple. We're going to book a 10 to 20 minute time on Zoom, and you're going to record with me and share your challenge. If you don't want to record, well, how about you consume it? You can email me to either record with me or email me to register and sign up to receive the newsletter. People are going to be talking about the challenges of operations, of sales, of constructability, how personal elements are affecting their professional life. I've already recorded a whole bunch of them from people in the industry, the owners of architecture practices and design practices and consulting practices. We really look forward to getting this out to you. Feel free to connect. Jonathan, Jonathan, at waldenhomes.ca. We look forward to getting this to you. So, and again, what I do want to preface by saying all of this, to anyone that's listening to this that is born, I would say, after 2000, okay, you have to appreciate that in the mid-90s, things like social media didn't exist. So, your ability to be able to get your brand out there and to make people aware of it. I mean, while I talk about SEO and social media and stuff like now, pay-per-clicks, it was different in the 90s. In the 90s, you had to make sure that you were putting yourself out there. There were trade shows and all that kind of stuff that you could be a part of and present yourself and make people aware of the brand. But a lot of it would either be from hopefully getting like a write-up in the newspaper was one way. You know, a website back then existed, but it not nearly.
I can't remember when I had my first website. I to be honest, and I said this to somebody recently, I'm actually really glad that I started my career without social media.
Right?
I'm really glad, because even though it is a gift now, like now it has given me amazing opportunities. And I mean, I do my own social media, which that's a whole other conversation.
We'll go there.
Okay, we'll go there. That's a whole other conversation. But part of the reason I do it is because I so believe in authenticity that I need, good or bad, I need it to be in my voice. Now, again, that's a whole other conversation. But in the 90s, like the only way to be connected, like what I love about Instagram is the connections that I have made online and in person because of Instagram. In the 90s, there was no way to meet other designers. Okay. Unless you were a part of your professional association, or unless you went to a trade show or a showroom or this or that. But there was no way to meet other people. There was no way to get inspiration unless, I mean, there was way more print.
Yeah, I was going to say, there were a lot of magazines.
There were a lot of magazines. So that was all you had really was a magazine. I mean, I had stacks of Architectural Digest for years.
But also, if you think about this, like when you were looking at those magazines for inspiration, potentially the content would have been curated so far in advance. Right? Yeah. Because they have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same as when we're recording this. We're recording this months before it airs.
Yeah.
Because, you've got to put the whole production together. But the content itself might actually have changed. The style might have changed by the time it went to print.
I would say it was aspirational. Like it felt not real, if that makes any sense. It felt like you're looking at something in a magazine. It didn't have the realness that real in-person connections have.
Yes.
So, but the other thing is you didn't have, in those days, you also didn't have the consciousness of building a brand.
Right.
Like that wasn't really a thing. I wasn't even aware. Like there was no real awareness of that.
I'm watching your eyes.
I'm like, I didn't even know. Like there were, like everybody knew the big, just like Jabu Pushelberg was huge. Like they were a brand. Ryerson grads as well. But like, so there were Saucony, Simone, like they were, now it's just Saucony Simone. Like it was like, they were a brand. Also Ryerson grads. And they're still like, these are still firms that are around today, but they were, 2x4.
Yeah. Also
Ryerson grads. They were, again, like everybody knew them and they were brands. But for the most part, like it was like they were that was so out of my scope of understanding. Do you know what I mean? So, but the other thing that we didn't have was this comparing each other thing or copying each other thing.
Right.
Like you didn't have any of that. And so there was more of a freedom, I think, for me to develop my own style. It was a long time before I realized that other people were not doing interior design the way I was. And that's part of the reason later in life why I actually sought out and wanted to be published. Not because I thought it would get me more work. I mean, you always hope it'll get you work, but it was because I was not seeing what I did in magazines.
Right.
And I wanted people to see that there was more than one way to design a kitchen, to design furniture, to work with fabric. Like not everything has to be the same as everybody else's, that you could use your personality, and which is very similar to how I grew up, how my father expressed himself with, fantastic clothes and how, my mother was always, our house was quite lovely. And it was not because it was a big house, but it was because it felt like us.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to bring to every project. It should feel like you. It's seen through my lens. Like if you look at my projects, there's a similarity to them, but each one, the biggest compliment I can get is when somebody says to the client, "Oh, your house is so you," or "Your place is so you." And that is what I always hope to achieve.
Yeah.
But, social media has sort of given people the feeling that, they have to do it like this, or they're not going to be successful, or they have to do it like that, or they're not going to get published, or they have to do it like that, or people won't like it, or they won't get enough likes, or this or that, or whatever. And okay, but I think, is that really how you want to design? Is that what you want to bring to the table? And I bring to the table what I want to see in the world.
Yeah.
So, and I think a part of it is because of the education that I had. Like, I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of design and art history. I also love to travel. So when you travel outside of your own little town or country or whatever, you see what other people do in the world, and how there's a big world out there with a lot of interesting interiors and fabrics and furniture. And it's a great place to express yourself. If you can't express yourself in your own home, like,
where else is safe?
Where else is safe? Exactly.
So in understanding and kind of the evolution of the practice, at what stage of this early part of the practice, or whenever it was, when did you realize you needed employees? And secondary to that, if we can remember it, what was the role that you needed to fill first?
So, also a great question. You ask all the good ones. I'm going to say, trying to remember. So for many years, I had a studio in my house.
Okay.
And after working for two people where I worked in a studio in their homes, I realized, like, I didn't want to have people in my home. I didn't want to have other people in my home.
Like me in this podcast.
No, you have a totally separate office. So it's different. Like, my home office was, at one point, it was in the basement of my house. And then at another point, when my son moved into the basement, I took over his old bedroom. Right. And so it was upstairs. And I just believe I needed a separate, you need to have, for me as the owner of the company, I needed a separation between work and my home life. And it was really important to me to have, that was like sort of my way in that, at that time, of doing work-life balance, is not having people in my house. And I think because my kids were young and I had dogs, and it was just, for me, I know it works for a ton of people. It just wasn't, my house was also small. Like, I lived in North Toronto, a typical North Toronto house, and it wasn't going to work for me. So the first employees that I hired and I went to a seminar at that time, a design seminar. And that was another thing. So, like, you have to keep up with your education. You have to go to things. You have to get out of your pajamas. You have to go to events. You have to sign up for seminars that you think can help your business, whether it's a business coach or a business seminar or whatever. Like, you have to constantly, even if you don't want to increase the size of your business, you should constantly be working on your business and what you can do to improve and make it the best that it can be, because there's always something to learn, always. So I went to this seminar. It was probably maybe 2013 or 14, like something like that. It wasn't that long ago. Like, I'm going to say, no, maybe more than 10 years ago. So maybe 12 or 13 years ago. But it was pretty recent.
But I was going to say,
like, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, but your practice is like 17, 18 years old at this point.
Right. And I think because I never really had a mentor in any of the jobs that I had, you learn everything the hard way.
Yeah.
And so I have done it. I've made all the mistakes. I tried all the different things, and, some things worked, some things didn't, but I went to this seminar, and it was really an eye-opening experience. And one of the things that was said in the seminar by a number of different designers who I really respected, they said, you need to hire for your weaknesses and play to your strengths. And they called it working within your zone of genius. Do what you are good at. What you are not good at, you are spinning your wheels, and it's not efficient for your clients to be paying for that time for you to take 20 hours on AutoCAD. If that's not what you're good at, then hire somebody to do it. If you are not good at doing your own accounting, hire somebody, or bookkeeping, hire somebody to do it. So that was sort of like a massive, oh my God, kind of moment. And the first people I hired were people to do stuff I didn't want to do or I wasn't good at doing. And that left me more time to really excel at everything that I was really good at. So the first people I hired were like bookkeepers, accountants, like financial people that helped me organize my business, like, and not like that way. And because I don't think that way. And so that was incredibly helpful and just took a massive amount of stress away. And so that was fantastic. And then I realized I wanted to level up my drawing game, whereas I could draw everything by hand. The more, which is fine to do a sketch if it's a small little something. But once you're putting a drawing package together, so then I hired freelance people to do all my CAD drawings for me, because even though I never did CAD in school because it wasn't a thing yet. So I did take CAD courses afterwards. Like I went to George Brown and I learned how to do and I thought, if I have to spend my time doing this, forget it. Like there's no way, because I find CAD not creative. Like it doesn't work the way I think.
Yeah, technical.
Yeah, it's very, and you need a command for every single thing that you do. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't have the patience for that. And it is a massive skill set completely unto itself. So I'm going to leave it for somebody who has that massive skill set. And so that was the next thing that I did. And I hired freelance so that when there was a ton of work, that was great. When there wasn't a ton of work, people were free to go and do whatever they wanted to do. And that worked. That was a really great simpatico relationship. And then the next employees I hired I hired, I'm going to say we're now 2025. So I'm going to say 6 years ago. And so now I have an amazing project manager. And actually, originally I hired her to do all of my back end, all of my admin, all of my design docs, like all of my invoicing and purchase orders and inputting all of our custom projects and just inputting all of that information. And then that relationship just evolved. And so now she runs all the logistics for all of my projects. So she sends invoices to clients. She follows up with suppliers. She's not a designer, but she's incredibly creative. So we work really, really well together because we actually are very opposite. I'm not going to say opposite because we're not opposite, but we complement each other. Right. And so
she fills the roles of the things that you're
100%. And she also definitely keeps me on track and on budget. And, I'll pick something. I'm like, isn't this fantastic? She'll be like, how much is that? And I'll be like, oh yeah, okay. Well, maybe we'll just use it for a pillow or something, So, it's a great checks and balances system.
Yeah.
And then again, so I hire employees, mostly freelance now, as the work expands. And as the work, in quieter times, people are free to do what they want. I also really believe in hiring and mentoring properly. Interns from school, they need their required hours. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that is really on my radar to do. I haven't been able to do it in the last couple of years because the schedule when students have to do this work is very specific. So often I'll be traveling. So I'm away for that period of time. So that's something for sort of 2025 that I'd love to be able to build in, to be able to, because I think in design school, a lot of people promote commercial design as the be all and the end all. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. I mean, the world needs commercial
it's a stream.
Designers. It's definitely a stream. But residential interior design is also a stream, and it's also can be incredibly rewarding and incredibly creative, and it's a whole other thing. But
I have an idea for you.
Okay.
We'll talk about it offline about this and how to help with that.
So that's sort of how my philosophy is always to hire for either your weaknesses, and because we all cannot be good at everything, or to hire for the stuff you either don't have time for or frankly you just don't want to do.
So at this stage, you have between the project manager you have.
So I have her, and our studio is built on not necessarily every day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So she works as she needs to work, or as the projects demand. When it's busy, we're working a ton. When it's less busy, we're working less. But she is still, that is her role. And then I have people doing my CAD drawings. Again, they're freelance. I have bookkeepers. I have accountants. So
you're talking like a kind of in and around a ballpark of like somewhere between 4 to up to 10 people, depending on.
It's usually no more than sort of 6. And it's usually around 4. I've never had the desire to have a really big firm.
Right.
I like it small. I think that's partly because I'm such a control freak. I like it small. I like being able, and our projects are all different sizes. So we range from 5,000 square foot home in the Kingsway to a 2,000 square foot condo to a condo that's being built by a big builder that we are changing before it's even built, to someone's family room, someone's kitchen. Every project, like I said before, is just as important.
Right.
But we like to stagger and have smaller projects with bigger projects. Not every project can be a 5,000 square foot home that's starting to build in January. Like, you can't have everything at the same time. But I like to give my clients individual personalized attention. Like, there's a lot of hand-holding that goes on in this job, and I don't mind doing it. Like, I'm okay with that.
Right.
Our clients, they pay us well. They put a lot of faith in us. They trust us. And I want to be there for them. And I want to be that person that makes sure that their project goes smoothly, that we want it to be as stress-free and pain-free as possible. And that's what we do really, really well.
Cori's going to discuss the importance of staying on top of both design trends and technical specs. And that reminded me of what I've seen out of Kaplan's over the years. Kaplan's Appliance is one of those rare companies that takes the client experience seriously from the second you walk in. What makes them different is the layout. They've got dedicated spaces for each manufacturer, be it Sub-Zero, Wolf, Miele, Gaggenau, Thermador, Genair, Fisher-Paykel, and so on. You're not just walking through a sea of disconnected appliances, you're seeing how each line fits together and what that could look like in your own space. But the real standout is the team. They aren't just commission-driven people pushing the latest promo. They're trained continuously, up to date on the newest technology, and laser focused on matching you with the right product for how you live and how you want your clients to live. I have seen clients go to Kaplan's unsure of where to start, and they've always come back saying some version of, I felt heard, but I felt guided. And in this business, that kind of trust and care, well, it's gold. If you want to be connected to Kaplan's Appliances, feel free to reach out to me. I will connect you with a specialist there who will understand what you're looking for and then connect you with the right salesperson that matches what you're looking for out of that experience. My email address is Jonathan, JONATHAN, @waldenhomes.ca. So how many projects would you take on between whatever's in completion, but then in construction and design development? Like, what's the range?
So it depends. And again, it depends on the size and the scope of work.
Yeah.
But I think our sweet spot is anywhere between sort of, I'm going to say 6-7 projects a year.
Okay.
Because especially since COVID, every project, I mean, with the exception of a kitchen renovation or a living room sort of decorating project.
Yeah.
Like a decorating project where there's no construction is very different than,
Yeah.
a whole condo renovation. Like I said, but you need the smaller ones to fill out the large. So anywhere between 6 to 8 projects a year,
Okay.
because most projects take a year.
Yeah.
From the time that I meet with somebody or have, by the time we have a chat and we make sure that we're a fit for each other. We meet in my studio. We do a consultation, and then it's a year, and that we have a very, very specific design process that we follow. Whereas it's the same for every project. It doesn't matter if it's the decorating living room project or the full condo renovation. It doesn't matter. The process is exactly the same. We follow the same steps to get to the end, and that's what keeps us organized.
Mm-hmm.
So everything takes time. Everything still takes time. And because we do a lot of custom work, that takes time too. So
yeah, and I will bring it back to what we talked about before, and that is the conversation about social media and that controlling that narrative takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Developing content takes time.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of effort that has to go into ensuring that stays current.
100%.
That's time. And I know that I've used that term a few times, literally, even right there.
There you go.
Right? But it's very real in today's market to stay relevant.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of people, they're on Pinterest, they're watching HGTV, they're doing all the things. The first thing we have to do with our clients is manage expectations, because all of those things provide unrealistic expectations. So, I'll get a picture from a client who wants to hang the chandelier over the bathtub. And I have to explain to them that, in Ontario, we can't do that. You have to know your building codes. You have to manage expectations. You have to explain to them, why they can't. I mean, unless they have really large ceilings, you can't, that's the one I get the most, to be honest.
Chandeliers over bathtubs.
Chandeliers over the tub. I get that all the time. Yeah.
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, I get it all the time. Yeah. Why can't I do this? Or, I get, why can't I hide an outlet in my floor with like a floorboard over it? Or why can't I put an outlet in a cupboard? Like stuff like that. A lot of all the stuff I get is electrical related. And I'm not an electrician, but I know, enough about codes to say, yes, you can do this. No, you can't do that. Okay, well, there might be a workaround for this. And, again, discuss it with the builder, discuss it with the contractor.
Yeah.
Because very often, it's the why. Why do you need this? Okay, this is why you need it. Okay, here's a great solution for that then. Let's figure this challenge out.
So do you find you're using social media to be able to educate?
Yes and no. We use social media. Like I use my Instagram, for example, to let people know who I am. Part of it is to let them know who I am, what I'm about, what my philosophy is, who I am as a person. I do put my family out there. I put my dog out there. I'm kind of an open book. Like if you look at my Instagram, you'll get a pretty good sense of who I am.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, again, because every project takes a year. I want to work with nice people. I want to work with people. I mean, we don't have to be best friends. I don't mean that, but I mean, we have to have a good, professional, respectful working relationship. And frankly, we have to like each other. Like, why start out a relationship if you're not aligned in a lot of things that are important to each of you in life? Do you know what I mean? Like residential is very personal. I mean, we're designing their night tables. We know what's in their medicine cabinets. We know who has a CPAP machine. You know what I mean? Like we know all of these things about.
Oh, you should.
Of course.
Yeah.
So it's very personal. So when you do have these conversations with your clients, like you really have to build on a foundation of shared, aligned, whether it's values, it's not really values, but you just have to sort of trust each other. And so that's why I use my Instagram sort of, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm about. This is what I love. This is what my finished projects look like. This is where they started from. Look at the before and afters. Like everyone loves a before and after.
Yeah.
This is what I can do for you. I can transform your room, your home. I can make it feel like you. Look at this. Because I design with a lot of color, people are in this city, in this province are very safe when it comes to color. And a lot of that, yes, I really like a minimalist look. That's a whole other camp. And we do monochromatic and we do soft color. Not everything is bold and bright and everything. Like there's a way to design with color that's subtle and calming, but it is what we do. It's what I do best. And it's the pattern mixing or the texture mixing or whatever it is. And I want you to see that this is how we do it and this is how you can do it. And you don't need to be afraid of it. And my studio is also super colorful, and that might not be your taste, but I want you to see that you can put pattern on a chair. And it's okay. Like it looks really great. You might want more subtle pattern, but that's something that we discuss and what we talk about. And we have clients where they want just very subtle use of color for whatever. And we're very respectful of that too. But it's sometimes I use social media to show you what's possible.
Yeah. See how far you can stretch someone in their imagination.
Exactly. Because sometimes we don't expect our clients to know everything. Otherwise they wouldn't need us. So we're there to show you, to let you know what's possible. You might put all your stuff on Pinterest, but that's because that's all you know. We're going to take what you've put on Pinterest and we're going to say, okay, what is it about this that you like? And we talk to the client about what is it about this? And they're like, oh, well, we love how this room feels, or we love the color, or we love the material of the kitchen, or we love the natural stone, or we love this light or whatever. And so it's about deciphering what other people are using on their social media to sort of bring the project to fruition and sort of figure out what we need to give them. Like, what do you need? What do you want? Because they often can't articulate. A lot of our clients are not visual people. We can't operate on I'll know it when I see it kind of thing, because that's impossible.
Of course.
So we have to be as detailed as possible with our visuals so that they can understand what that looks like. Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
You did. Yeah. I mean, look, to me, it sounds like there's the interest in wanting to have the connectivity and have people understand who you are. There's an educational element to it in that way, and wanting to be able to formulate some relationship with people, whether it's going to be a client or not.
Absolutely.
Like, this is what you're going to get when you work with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yes, in short, yes.
Okay, good.
I want to ask you now, having spoken about the practice and what that looks like, the balance, and what does the balance look like for you? So those two children and your husband, and you talked about the interest in travel.
I'm very, very lucky. My kids are grown and gone. They're adults now. My son lives in England. He's a pastry chef. My daughter and her husband live in Ottawa. She works in the nonprofit sector. And thankfully, all these years later, my husband and I still like each other. And the work-life balance comes from, for me, having my studio separate from where I live.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge gift. I love going into my studio, but when I leave, I leave. And it's not that I'm not sometimes working on a document or a sketch. And it's not that I don't wake up in the middle of the night and do stuff. I do. But closing the door and coming home is home. And there is a separation. And so mentally, I've got that. And the other part of it is our master plan all those years ago when we had our kids very young was that they would be grown and gone and we would be young enough to travel and do all the things that we want to do. So we're very lucky. We try and travel as much as we can,
have there been places in the world that you have sought out because of the design?
Absolutely.
So like, what are some of your,
well, okay. So,
and it doesn't have to be, I don't like the word favorites, but like, what have been some of the memorable places that you've had the opportunity to see?
Okay. So we do go to the UK a lot.
Yeah.
Cause my son's there, and there's so much about British design that I completely relate to, that I gravitate towards, that I appreciate. The fact that in the UK, they're a country of makers. They are still a country of makers. Where in Canada, unfortunately, we don't make a lot of things here. I do try to have a lot of my furniture made here. I use local and Canadian artisans and craftsmen as much as humanly possible. But we don't make textiles here. And they make a lot of textiles in the UK, which is wonderful. And they're not afraid of antique furniture in the UK. Whereas, people here see brown furniture and they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with that? So there's that whole aspect of it. It's true. There's just a history and an appreciation for art and art history and architecture. Canada being so young that we don't even have anything to compare it to. You look at buildings that are, hundreds of years old. So even the architecture, whether it's the exterior and the interior, but they just have sort of just beautiful things to be inspired by.
Old world charm.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something about Europe. I feel the same way about France. It's a very different aesthetic, obviously. I feel England is, in my opinion, more casual.
Yeah.
And, they love color, they love pattern, which I relate to. And like I said, I've been very fortunate to meet with a lot of British textile makers and designers. And it's just such a joy for me. And in France also, like just the craftsmanship and how they do so much with such simple things. It's just the simplicity of just, the most gorgeous parquet floor. It's just gorgeous. Or just, they will paint everything white. They don't use a lot of color on their walls or wallpaper or anything in France, but the architectural detail, the moldings, the ceilings, the lighting is just, the plaster work is just.
Yeah, the plaster work.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and the way that they value like the light, the natural light that comes into a space, like it really is extraordinary. I've been fortunate. We've been to Greece where, again, super simple, but everything is about the environment and the environment that they live in, and building to suit where you live is really important. That's why, I don't get this, but I would probably think it was strange if, you're living in Toronto and someone wants like a beach theme. I'm like, we don't live in a beachy climate. Like, you really have to be respectful of where you live, what the light quality is, the natural light that you get in your home, where the light is coming from, what do you have to, just a simple thing like window coverings, like what do you need in Toronto versus what do you need in Greece? Like, it's very, very different. I've been to the surprising one that we were very fortunate to be able to go to at the time that we went. We had friends that were living in Shanghai. And so my husband and I went to China, and it was never on our list, but we went because our friends were living there, and it was extraordinary and we absolutely loved it. And now again, it was the right time and it was the right place for us to go. But even just the craftsmanship and the design and the color and it was very unique and very, very special. So I love that. I love the Netherlands. I love how, they've turned I love the canal houses, how, they are built a certain way.
Yeah.
And they're there, like you see, like 1673, like stamped on the outside of the building. Like, it's incredible that there's a building there that's from the 1600s it's still beautiful, and it's very tall and very skinny. And, they all have the hooks on the outside so that that's how they had to hoist furniture up to the top floor, because there's no way you could carry it up on the inside. No, we've been very, very fortunate to be able to see a lot of really, really interesting things. I love Italy. And again, like, a lot of people don't like Rome. They think it's dirty. They think it's crowded. I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way. For me, it's like, oh my gosh, like, look at something that's thousands of years old, not even hundreds, thousands of years old. It's just, and
you're saying all of this. I'm like, I gotta get, I haven't been to Europe. I'm like, I gotta get to Europe.
You have to go to Europe, and I'll tell you where to go. I'll give you like a primer, but you know what else was absolutely amazing? I love Newfoundland. I love Newfoundland.
There I have been. Yes.
I love Newfoundland. I love the people. They use a ton of color, everyone's house looks like someone's crazy grandma lived there, because the people in Newfoundland use what they had.
Yeah.
And so they use a lot of wallpaper, and they do a lot of quilting, because they're being resourceful, and they're using up the materials that they have, and they do a lot of knitting, and everyone's home is a true reflection of themselves, but also a reflection of the necessity that they have. But Newfoundland is fantastic. Like, if you can explore even just Canada, it's amazing. And Newfoundland is so high on my list. I love Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is fantastic. I was lucky in that I got to spend a lot of summers in Lunenburg, and it's just one of the most peaceful, beautiful places on earth. So like I said, I think design is truly influenced by where you live, but also places that you go to.
Yeah. Cori, I appreciate you coming.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Appreciate your story.
We could chat for like another couple hours.
Right? I like your storytelling. It's fantastic. I love the demeanor you have and the way that you describe both your business, but also the experiences that you've had. The ability to draw upon all those things that you've learned over the course of your career, and really stay current and utilize the tools that have changed over the years.
Absolutely.
It's a very amenable trade.
Oh, so thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. And I look forward to continuing the conversation and telling you some ideas I have for how to
absolutely
bring
love it
on board. Thanks again.